and that when it doesn't work, don't worry about it. But make eye contact, be authentic, and some will go and some won't go. But this whole concept of first impressions is really important, because the reality is, and I would say this today, I think I make, and this is good and bad, but I make up my mind about people to a large degree in the first 5 or 10 minutes I talk to them. And you might say, well, that's pretty shallow, and it is, but it's also human nature. So the reality check is just understand that this networking, these initial encounters, all these things are very important, and the decisions are going to be made very quickly. In a digital world, they're made very quickly. I would say one thing that I've seen in my career is that more things are judged and judgments are made before you ever get to the table to talk to somebody. You've been screened in or screened out. And a lot of that, 35 years ago, when I came out of school, you could get the interview, then you had to prove yourself or not prove yourself. But now often you wouldn't get those same interviews because you'd have been screened out one way or the other. And that's just a reality you're going to have to face as young people. The other thing, this is really kind of small, but it's amazing, but it's about showing up on time. You'd be amazed at the number of people who don't show up on time. They don't get together 5 or 10 minutes late and make some feeble excuse. And I have a great story about this. There's a friend of mine who actually lives in Charlottesville. He's the CEO of a company. He's been very successful. The company's up in Washington. And he is never late. I mean, if you go to dinner with this guy at 6 o'clock, he's there at 5:50. And I asked him, I said, and I'm always late. And so I said, why is it that you do? He said, well, when I was young and I was getting out of graduate school and I was invited to a function and I got there late, got there early, and I had my name tag at one of these tables. And at one of these other tables, I saw the name tag of the guy I really wanted to sit next to. And so I switched him. And he said, it's kind of embarrassing, but the guy that I sat next to offered me a job eventually, and it led to part of his career. The point is not the switching name tags at the table. The point is sometimes showing up early, or on time at least, is an advantage. It also allows you to kind of collect yourself a little bit in a way that you don't when you're running into something fast. And I will tell you, you make an entirely different first impression when you're running into the room 5 or 10 minutes late than you make when you're sitting there and you've been there before I am. The other thing you guys will probably struggle with is success and, rejection. And I will be honest with you, my own opinion, and I'm sure that our professor from Darden might share this a little bit, is that, it seems to me that so much career success has gotten to be about money, more so in the last 35 years. And when somebody says, he or she did really well, what they're really saying is he or she made a lot of money. And all I can tell you is that those 9,000 people that I've interviewed, that ain't it. It's really not. I've seen very many very wealthy, bored, burned out executives who don't know what to do with themselves when they get off the stage. I see executives that won't get off the stage because they don't know what to do with themselves. And some of the most, and I said this in the book, some of the most interesting, intriguing people that have lived very successful, very happy lives have been people that didn't make a lot of money. But that thread that I mentioned earlier that ran through their lives, they kept very close to that thread, and they never got too far away. So that big job that might have been pretty sexy, but wasn't them, they had the forbearance, had the ability to kind of stay on path for them. So you'll kind of struggle with this, and the worst thing you can do, and I see it all the time, is people comparing themselves to other people. It's awful when you're young, because that's what you do. That's how you make judgments about whether you're a loser or a winner. And all I can tell you is that it doesn't pan out in the end. The sooner you can get away from that and have your judgments about what you're going to do and who you are take a different form, the better off I think you'll be. Now, failure, is really important. All of my successes, I think, in my modest life, have stemmed from my failures in a funny way. When I got out of school, I didn't really know. The one success I had was I married a lovely woman who I love dearly. We're now in 38 years of marriage. But I didn't know, business school was my third choice, maybe my fourth. And I did it because I sort of knew I needed to do something, and that seemed like a good way to spend a couple of years. And my first job, when I was headed for corporate America, I took a job at Wake Forest University at the MBA program. So imagine this, I'm 24 years old, I'm the director of admissions and placement, and the average age of the entering student is 28. So I have a lot to tell these guys about what to do in their lives. But in a lot of ways, I wouldn't call that a failure. I had others that I could talk about that were clearly in that category. But what it did was it strips away everything. It takes off all the layers, and you sit there with yourself, and you figure out where to go next. And so that in this process where you are iterating between trying to figure out what to do and who to go to, and going to good interviews and bad interviews, and being completely perplexed and confused and feeling like you're failing, you're not. And actually that whole process leads me to something else, which I'll talk about, which is this whole concept of motion. And what I learned after a while, that people that go back whether they've been successful or failed, and they kind of put a wall around themselves and they don't continue to move, they stop, you're a dead man, And there's a little line I have here in the book. I think it's a little part of a poem by a guy named Theodor Rothke, and it says learning by going where you have to go. And the section is about creating momentum, and the idea is that you've got to put yourself in the early phase in as many new situations as you possibly can. And many of them are going to incite fear. Many of them are going to be, I don't know if I should do this. So I got into this profession. I was in business school, first year of business school, trying to get an internship. And I saw the name of a company that I thought was something else, and I didn't look, and I didn't prepare, and I said, what the heck, I'm just going to go in there and be myself. I thought it was an investment banking company, but it was an executive search firm. And so I very quickly, shut up and had a great, what I call listening interview. And damned if that night the guy called me and offered me a job, and I said, well, why not? I hadn't planned this, and that single accident has led to the last 32 years in the search business, and a wonderful career from my perspective. So you got to move. You got to put yourself in new situations. You've got to be comfortable that some are going to go well, others aren't going to go well, and enjoy that early period of life where very little is expected of you. These first jobs are first jobs, and most people hiring you into your first or second job are thinking, Oliver's going to leave in a couple of years. We're not going to keep him forever. We know Katie's going to be gone. So, they're trying to, they need you. You're kind of a cog in the wheel, but enjoy that. And the first part of your career is largely about those kinds of experiences. Not everybody knows they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, a CEO. And there's something very freeing in not knowing that. And so get comfortable with it. Just keep moving with it. But one of the most, the most important thing is to get out there and tell people. And there's one connecting story I think I have in this that I haven't talked about. Somebody told me once a long time ago when I started to go see 10 people I respected. A few people in my family, there were relatives, a few people that I admired that I grew up. The first general counsel of the Marriott Corporation lived next door to me. Down the street was a guy that was a lobbyist for the oil industry. And I went to about 10 people, and I just said, tell me your story. Why do you do what you do? What is it you get from it? What does it fill you with? Because I'm trying to figure out what to do, and I don't know. And it might flip some invisible switch in me. And it was one of the best things I ever did. And so I recommend it highly. And you'd be amazed at what those stories animate in you. And what they really animate is wisdom you'll have one of these days after you've gone through it, but their wisdom, because everybody loves talking about what they've done. And if you listen carefully, that wisdom can be very useful to you in the early phases, because you will get a glimpse, you'll get a notion, you'll get an idea that you might not have had before. And there's no way you're going to get that talking to your buddies or working on a legal pad or using your iPad to try to figure it all out, because you can't do it. The other thing is that I noticed in people is this whole thing of passion. You meet very quiet people that don't appear to have a lot of passion. Then you meet some real barn burners who are just out there. They're all over it. And what happens in life is you get 10, 20, 30 years out, you get this band of work as meaning, okay, at the most evolved sense, and work as necessity, which is I got to do this to pay the mortgage and put the kids in college. And everybody lies somewhere along those paths. It's very rare to have a person that really got it in the beginning and is going after what they view to be their meaning, evolving meaning in this life. Most people are taking jobs for external reasons, pragmatic reasons, and there's nothing wrong. That's just fine. But I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a club meeting, economist club in Washington 2 days ago, and the chairman of Morgan Stanley was talking. And he's a very clever guy, Australian, very funny, very light. And they said, well, why do you do what you do? What is it you get out of it? Well, everybody around, there were 450 people in the room. And you could just tell this guy next to me, go ahead and say it. It's the money, say it. He wouldn't say it. You're gonna find people at that end of the spectrum, and who knows what he really gets out of the business. I suspect in his case, being one of 12 kids, it's actually not the money. But you're gonna find that your passion and the way that you show that passion, the way you deliver it, who you deliver it to, you're gonna get people excited about you. And that's also what this whole process is about, is getting people interested and excited in you as a human being and what you can bring to the party. And I will tell you one other thing. My generation's, I don't know when the switch is flipped, but you get to be around 50 and all of my buddies that are all doing their thing, the single thing they really want to do is see the next generation well placed. They want to see you guys on track in good places in the world for you all. And it becomes a very important priority once you've sort of achieved most of what you're going to achieve in your career. And then, real quickly, the whole idea of choosing, it's important. You're going to make bad choices and good choices. The real point is not the choices. The point is that you're going to make bad ones. And what I have learned is that you have to live in those bad choices for a while. And that if you don't live in them long enough, you run out the exit and you don't know where you're going, and you often make that same mistake again. And I see it time and time again in people's careers. And you can see it when they've had 3 years here, 2 years here, 4 years here. They haven't really been very thoughtful. They haven't run that thread of who they are through that moment in time and where they're going in their life and their career.